dun, da-da-dun, dun, da-dun, da-da-dun, dun, da-da-dun, dun. And I will stop now, because I suck at singing. But the funniest thing is, you were both in the first season already, in the first episodes of Game of Thrones ever. So when you were approached or did the casting, did you have any idea what you were getting yourselves into?
I was, so did you do the pilot?
No.
So I did the pilot as well the year before. And whenever that was being cast, I think I was either 10 or 11. So I was very little. And I had no idea about any of it. I remember asking my English teacher if she had heard of the books, and she said no. So no, I had no idea. And then when it was picked up and we found out that it was going to go to series, I had to audition again, and I was cast, and I still had no idea. And I think really, when the first season took off, it was like, okay. For everyone, I think it was a bit of a, not a surprise, but it was a, I don't think any of us were expecting it to be as big as it became. Would you agree?
I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, when I auditioned, I actually auditioned for a different role. And I didn't get it. And I was, any children in the audience? I was fucking raging. I was so angry because they were flying this actor over from England, putting him up in a hotel. I lived 5 minutes away from the studio. So, you know, they were spending all this money to bring, and I was here. So I didn't get that role, but then they auditioned me for Sir Meryn Trant. And I did the audition, and I got the role. And the role I originally auditioned for was Jory Cassell, who died in season 1, episode 5. Yes! Thank you, gods! We had no idea. I mean, we literally had no idea. I had not read the books. I still have not read the books. I have them. I have the books, all of them. And I'm not going to read them until he brings out bloody Winds of Winter. Then I'll start reading the books. But I had all the books, so I knew a couple of things. I knew, one, everybody said that this was a book you couldn't film. That was the first talk for all of season 1. You can't film these books. It's impossible. No way. So I was only in a couple of episodes in season 1. And then wife and I are watching the show every week when it comes out, and I'm thinking, this is a pretty good show. Season 2, then we film, then it comes out. Yeah, this is a really good show. We got on set at the start of season 3, and there was a real excitement on set. And I was like, what's going on? And it was the DVD sales. The DVD sales had gone to the moon. They literally couldn't make the DVDs quickly enough. They were selling out everywhere. We had word of mouth. People were refusing to talk to their colleagues at work until they'd watched Game of Thrones. And that was happening. And it was happening all over the world. By the time season 4 came out, it was the biggest show in the world. And it was, I mean, I couldn't walk down the street. And that was lovely. Hi, yes, it's me. Hi, yes, you can have a photograph. But we had no idea. We had no idea that it was going to be. I don't think anybody could have foreseen just what a phenomenon it became.
Speaking of having no idea, you both, of course, have the original DVD or Blu-ray sets of the show at home, or do you have the Blu-ray, these like vinyl but smaller?
I don't have a DVD player.
Ladies and gentlemen, Game of Thrones fan. Really? Oh. But okay, so you're missing out. You have the Blu-rays. You're missing out. You have the Blu-rays. 3 people still watch Blu-rays, because the fun part is the story I actually want to tell you is, because you said no one could have anticipated. I think it was episode 10 of the first season, they used a prop. And that prop was a face mask of former American President George Bush.
I was there.
And they made it bloody.
That was the scene on the battlements whenever Joffrey is showing Sansa her father's head. And then I slapped Sansa. That was fun.
Sophie was like 13 at the time.
Oh, no, listen, I didn't touch her, okay? It was all camera angles. It was all good. So, yeah, we were on the battlements, literally. And I'm looking at the heads, and I look around, and there's George W. And it's like, are you fucking... And they're going, don't say. Nobody's noticed yet. I said, that's fucking George W. Bush. And it was, yeah.
Yeah.
It was his head. And it was deliberate. They may say, oh, it was an accident. It was one we found lying around and we didn't realise. Nonsense. They absolutely realised. Absolutely. And it was quite deliberate.
But the biggest problem was not only did they realize, other people realized, and I think it drew in some complaints, and then they censored the scene, which is why I said you're missing out if you watch it on streaming, because only the first print of the DVDs and Blu-rays has the scene intact with the George Bush hat. This set is worth a fortune, and all other Blu-ray and of course the streaming offers have this one shot omitted.
Okay, that's good to know. I'll go home and check my DVD library when I get back home.
I think my mum might have the DVDs, so that's good to know.
That is very good to know. But speaking of which, you said you watched the show after it came out. You watched the episodes.
I honestly, and I'm not exaggerating when I tell you, that I'm as big a fan of the television show as anybody here today. I have seen the full series 4 times. I've watched Battle of the Bastards 11 times. I've seen Hold the Door 7 times. And that's soon to be 8. So yeah, I'm a huge fan of the show. And I was a huge fan of the show. It was actually quite funny because I phoned, in season 3 it was, I phoned the production office and I said, hang on a second, I have to take this. It is my kid, they're traveling with me. Yeah, sorry about this. This is...
Anybody like me to dance?
Yes.
Yes.
Were you allowed to watch the show? No.
No. So I was 12 when it came out, and then I was 13 when the second season, or when we filmed. Anyway, I was a young teenager, and so my parents would watch it the night that it came out, and then the next day they would let me watch it, but they would put me in the living room with them, and they would have noted down the scene that came before a bad scene. And so they would sit me down, and then they would fast forward to scenes that I was allowed to watch, and then they would go, Amy, eyes! And I would have to go while they fast forwarded through in case I saw, a nipple or a penis. And
which there were plenty.
For
those of you who haven't seen the show.
Yeah. But all of my friends knew that I was going to be in it, and all of my friends' parents knew that I was going to be in it, but they didn't know what my parents knew, which was the full extent of the show. So all of my friends watched it with their parents, aged 12 and 13, the first episode, and the next day in school, everyone went to me, Amy, I don't know what... I didn't think it was going to be like that. And I was like, but did you see me?
I need to tell you a quick story because this reminds me so much of when I was about that age, I think 11, 12. I bought the DVD of South Park, the movie.
Okay.
And I loved it. And my parents, they then saw the cover and the big sticker that says rated 16 plus, and I was like 11, so they said, we want to know what you are watching here. So I played the movie to them, but I hid the remote control in my leg, and every time I knew a bad scene was going to come, I changed to the next chapter. And my parents, as much as I love them and as smart as they are, did not notice that the movie was over after 13 minutes.
My dad showed me the South Park movie when I was about 6 years old. And I had nightmares. My mum nearly divorced him for it. It was really bad.
Anyways, if you would like to ask some questions, there is a very lonely mic right in the middle. Yes, please.
Servus. One question on Ian. How do you handle all the hate because you got of your character?
The hatred?
Yeah.
Right, okay. Good question.
He's used to it.
It's really, really funny because unlike many, many television shows, and I have heard of actors like getting slapped by members of the public, the Game of Thrones audience were a cut above. They were smarter, they were more intelligent. I think you had to be to watch a show with such incredibly diverse characters and storylines. You had to pay attention to the show. So just about every single person I've ever met as a result of being on Game of Thrones, usually at Comic Cons, know the difference between me as a person and me as a character. Having said that, if someone comes up to me and says, I hated that guy, that is the biggest compliment you could ever pay me, because it means I was doing my job. And that was the job. The job was to play a thoroughly detestable human person with, I think, no redeeming features whatsoever. The real funny thing about my character was, for 4.5 years, it was just fun playing him. It was only the last 2 episodes where you got to see the private side of the character. I didn't know that was coming. What happens is, at the start of the season, your phoned David and Dan phone you, the showrunners, to tell you you're going to die, it's your last season. And they do it at the very start of the season. So you get the phone call, will you take a conference call from David and Dan? No. No, I won't. I'm in the shower. Call back next year. So I took the call and they said, this is it. This is your last season. And they said 3 things. 1, you're going to die in episode 10, which is the season finale. Everybody wants to die in the season finale. Nobody wants to go out in episode 2 or 4, like Ian McElhenney. He still hasn't got over that. So you want to go out in episode 10. 2, they said you're going to have an absolutely spectacular death. And it was. To this day, it is the most expensive individual death filmed on the show. So I was quite pleased with that. The third thing they said was, we're going to get to see a really nasty side of your character. And that's all they said. I thought, great, I'm going to kill somebody popular. Wonderful. And then I got the scripts. Oh no! And I'm reading this and I'm going, oh my God. No. But you have to do it. It's your job. You can't say, I'm not playing that. I'm not doing that. This isn't right. And the trick was to make him human, because there's nothing more frightening and more horrifying than a human who is behaving in this way. So that was the job. But on a personal level, I cannot stress this enough. I have received nothing but praise and compliments and the loveliest things from everybody I've ever met who's been a Game of Thrones fan, because they do know the difference between an actor and a character. And I think it's extraordinarily gratifying to me, as I've said before, when someone comes up to me and says, I hated him. The funniest times were around season 4, season 5, when the show was huge. I'd be walking through an airport and there'd be somebody like And they wouldn't know who I was. They didn't click, but they knew they didn't like me. And it was only when I took off the glasses and went that they got who I was. And they went, oh yeah. They thought, are you on Crime Watch? Are you Britain's most wanted? But those were funny times. Those were really, really funny times. But I have never had a negative experience from any fan, ever.
Bitteschön.
Keep it that way.
Please.
Okay, first of all, thank you for being here. My question is a personal one. I think it's hard to answer, but who do you think is worse, Ramsey or Joffrey?
Oh.
Your brother or your cousin?
Cousin. I have always thought that Ramsey was worse. And I think the reason that I have always thought that is because I feel very attached to Jack, who played Joffrey, and I never worked with it was Ian, wasn't it, who plays Ramsey? No. What's he called? Ewan. I met him years later, not at the time. So I think that whenever I saw Jack on screen, I was like, oh, that guy, he's so crazy. But then, like years later, when I saw Ramsey, I was like, God, this is rough. This is really rough. But then I think that actually, when you dig down into the characters, the motivation behind them, like Ramsey was hungry for. They were both hungry for power and they had this need for cruelty. So I think they were very similar in a lot of ways. But I wonder if, because Joffrey was able to get away with doing things in maybe a slightly more hands-off manner, like he could just snap his fingers and whatever he wanted would happen, maybe that actually does make him more evil. Like when you think of the world, maybe the people who have power and who do have the power and who choose to do evil with it are worse than the individual people. I don't know. That's a bigger philosophical question. But yeah, my gut says Ramsey, just because I don't like him. No.
Joffrey. Every day and twice on Sundays. First of all, let me say I know both Ewan and Jack. I'm very, very fond of the both of them. I worked more with Jack. I didn't have any scenes with Ewan, but they're both extraordinarily talented actors that have brought two of perhaps the most iconic villains in television history to life. But Joffrey was the first. Jack portrayed a character, and it was a tough job. It was a tough gig that was absolutely universally hated by everyone, and he was the first one to do it. In a way, he changed television history. He became television's worst villain virtually overnight. Now, Jack did actually get a bit of flack from some quarters because he was so bloody good at his job. The reason why I thought Joffrey was worse as a character was because, and also in the books, Joffrey is significantly younger than Ramsey. And there was a petulance to Joffrey that made you dislike him even more, that actually made your blood boil. And that didn't happen. You expected that with Ramsey. But you were, with Joffrey, you were constantly little. You know, there was that genuine emotional reaction to how Jack played this character. And I honestly think he did such a good job. He created television history. He was the worst villain up to that point in television history. That was some gig. And he was perfect in the role. Perfect in the role. He did not put an eye blink wrong.
need to add a little story again, because there is this one scene with Joffrey, and let's just make it as safe for work as possible. The two ladies, that episode, and I watched that on my laptop while on vacation. And the next day, for breakfast, the people living in the room next to mine asked me, "What were you watching yesterday?" And I was like, "Game of Thrones, why?" "Because we heard some strange things." And I was like, "What did you hear?" "Swords fighting." "Oh, good, good, that's the best thing you might have heard after this episode." Yeah. Good. I didn't hear any of the other stuff. Please.
Hello. My question is rather simple and basic. Since Game of Thrones is a really low fantasy, realistic and gritty series, what are your opinions on more lofty and magical high fantasy series?
I think, I mean, you know, I was a huge fan, for example, of the Lord of the Rings trilogy, the films. I thought the last one was maybe 10 minutes too long. It had a few false endings before it actually ended, but even at that, they were remarkable films, truly remarkable films. I've always been a Star Trek fan, always. I've always been a Star Wars fan, always. So I'm very, very fond of all sorts of fantasy genres. To me, everything is about the story. If it's not a good story, then it's not going to be a good film or a good series. So with Lord of the Rings, for example, you have, like George Martin, genius storytelling. This world that he created out of his own mind, just genius. So that made for 3 wonderful films. The remakes, like making a series of the films, making a series of the Harry Potter films. Personally, I'd leave well alone. I don't know what new experience the series of Harry Potter is going to bring to what we had with those wonderful films.
Yeah.
And I don't think anybody could play Sirius Snape like Alan Rickman.
No.
Yeah.
It's almost sacrilege to recast that role. But everything has its place. In my own opinion, everything has its place. And if it's a good story, then it's worth watching. And that goes for television and film right across the board. Right across the board. If you've got a good story, good people telling the story, then you're going to watch it.
I would agree with pretty much all of that. I have always, ever since I was a very little kid, I have been fascinated by fantasy and by magic specifically. And as a little girl, I genuinely really believed that I was a fairy, and that I needed to give my wings a chance to sprout. And so I would jump off high things quite often, and I have these 2 permanent bumps on my head on each side from
horns?
Yeah, from just leaping off things. So I think that I've always loved that aspect of it, and I think maybe also being Irish, so much of our folklore is I mean, all folklore is kind of fantastical, but Irish folklore has always really fascinated me, and I've always felt very intrigued by it, even though Irish fairies are very different to the type of fairies that I thought I was. But I also think, sort of going off what you were saying about remakes and stuff, I think that what excites me the most is whenever you get a new series or a new film or a new book, and it's a new thing, it's a new original concept, because that's always going to be more exciting to me. I think there are so many brilliant artists out there and brilliant writers who don't get the chance because at the moment the industry seems very focused on sequels and remakes and prequels and sort of spin-offs of existing IP, which can be done fantastically, don't get me wrong. And if anybody wants to cast me, I won't say no. But I also just think that we're missing out on what the next Game of Thrones could be if we're focused on what else can come of Game of Thrones. That doesn't exactly answer your question about high and low fantasy, but that was just something that came to me there. I hope in some way I did answer your question.
You got it.
Yeah, thanks.
Sorry. Hi. To both of you, what was your most favorite scene for each of you to play, and the most exhausting one for each of you to play?
Favorite scene and most exhausting?
Yes.
None of my scenes were very exhausting because I was so young. There are very strict rules around how long I could be on set, and I had to have very regimented breaks. So every day that I was filming, we would get to the end of my shoot, not the end of everybody else's shoot, because they would have to do the kids stuff faster than everybody else's. So they would shoot around the kids, you know. We would get to the end and I'd be like, can we do it again? Can we do it again? And the answer was legally no. So I was always desperate for more. I was never tired at the end of the day. I was always like, put me in again, put me in again. Which I was very lucky because I knew that there were some exhausting days for other people. And my favorite scene to film was probably my scene, which I think you were in, the one that we did in Dubrovnik, where Marcella is being sent away from King's Landing to Dorne. And I'm in a little boat, and everybody's on the beach waving me off. Were you in that scene? Yeah. And I had to cry in that scene, and that was sort of, for me as a little precocious little actress, I was like, oh, you guys want me to cry? I'm gonna cry. But it was such a fun scene for me too, because I was in the boat with these extras who were Croatian, and they were rowing the boat, and one of them kept singing to me because he didn't want me to be sad, and he kept singing, don't cry baby, don't cry, and I was like, I have to cry. I legally have to cry right now. You're not helping me, buddy. So yeah, I think that was my favorite scene to film. But also in that scene, they put David Nutter directed that scene, and he decided that because my character was being sent away from her mum and her family, it would be a good idea to get my mum involved, my actual mum. And so he put my mum behind the camera and got her to go. And I radioed David after that take, and I went, David, what's my mum doing? And he went, oh, I thought it would help inspire you. And I went, it's inspiring embarrassment is what it's doing. And I was mortified. I was so angry at my mum. I couldn't believe that she would steal my thunder like this. So yeah, that was my favorite scene to film, when my mum wasn't there.
Favorite scene to be a part of, Tyrion's trial, which was also my worst day ever on set, because I was giving my evidence in the first day's filming. There's 450 extras on set, 6 of whom I went to school or university with. Okay? So I couldn't get a word right of my lines. Not a single bloody word. After about the 4th take, I would just say to the script supervisor, go away, get away. And I said to Alex Sakharov at the end, it was excruciating. Even Nikolai came up and said, I really feel for you. And Nikolai doesn't feel for anybody. So it was just total embarrassment. I could see my school friends. I told you he was rubbish. Look at him, rubbish. So I said to Alec, the director, I said, when's the close-up? Because the close-up's the money shot. That's 90% of what they're going to use in the final cut. When the camera's right here. He said, it's Thursday morning. I said, I'm going to get this on Thursday morning in one take. And I did. and I will remember the speech until the day I die. This wasn't the first time the imp threatened the king. Right here in this throne room, he marched up those steps, called our king a half-wit, compared his grace to the mad king, and suggested he meet the same fate. And when I spoke in the king's defense, he threatened to have me killed. I will know that when I'm 90.
Woo!
Thank you.
Woo!
And the reason why I loved that scene, being part of that scene so much, was I had this singular privilege of watching Peter Dinklage deliver the final speech in that scene about 7 different times in 7 different ways, and each one was superb. So that was fun. Most exhausting the day I died, because that was my last day filming. And the first eye went out at 8:30 in the morning, and I got a prosthetic over that eye. Second eye went out about 9:15, and I got a prosthetic over that eye. And that was me until 11 o'clock that night. I couldn't see, I was blind. They didn't have time to take the prosthetics off. So I filmed that entire scene, that entire day of 13 or 14 hours, and I was blind, which was really weird. It was really a long day. It took 1.5 hours to fit the throat cut. So, you know, that was a long, sticky day. 10 gallons of fake blood, most of which went down my nose. And it's sugar syrup, so it made you sick. It was horrible. That was a long day. That was a really long day. Emotionally, the day before, when I'm beating the children, that was a long fucking day. One more thing I'll say, which was the scene that absolutely terrified me. Season 5. We're coming into Split Harbour, and Arya sees Sir Meryn get off the rowing boat for the first time. And it's the first time she's seen him since he killed Syrio Forel. Sir Meryn was the first name on her list. So we get down to the jetty, and David Nutter is the director. And I'm looking at the boat. David, a moment of your time, sweetheart. I said, there's 5 seats on that boat. And he went, yep. I said, there's 6 of us. 4 are going to be rowing the boat. Roger Ashton Griffiths is obviously the guest of honor, so he's going to be sitting in the middle bench. Where am I going to be? He said, you're going to be standing up at the end of the boat. I said, you're going to have me standing in a rowing boat with my back to the camera in 28 kilos of armour in a harbour that's 50 foot deep, where all the town's effluence gets washed into it twice a day. That's what you want me to do? He said, yeah. I said, on the off chance that I go over the side, I'm going straight to the bottom. Who's going to get me out? And he pointed over to this guy over, and there's this diver sitting smoking a cigarette looking at me. Who the fuck's he? He says he's Croatian Special Boat Services. He's one of the top 5 divers in Europe. I said, how does he know to get me out? He said he's got a knife in his belt, and he knows to cut here, cut the sword off, and he'll have an oxygen mask on you while he's doing that, and he'll get you to the surface. Yeah, fuck it, all right, I'll do it. So I did it, and we were 30 feet out from the harbour, and they're rowing away, and the oarsman catches a crab, and the boat starts to go like that. And I grab onto the oarsman, and I lean back. I said, see, if you fucking do that again, you're coming with me. So we get to the harbour in one take. We do it in one take. We get to the harbour. I turn round. Arya sees my face. I step off the boat, and they didn't use it in the final cut. The only thing you see is the boat actually touching the jetty in the final cut. You don't see us rowing in. And that was absolutely terrifying. Fun though. Good story.
Speaking of the scene with the load of blood, did you have any interference? It's very very stupid question. Did you have any interference with wasps or anything else that day? Because funny thing is, you can make fake blood out of like 20,000 different mixtures, but one that is really commonly used is a sort of thickened glucose syrup.
Yeah.
And I've heard that once the actors are, sprayed with this fake glucose blood and lying there, wasps and bees are loving the scent of the sugar, so they're being pestered by...
That did happen to us a lot on Alexander, because we were filming in the Thailand jungle to film Alexander, and we were covered in fake blood and there were mosquitoes and everything. My death scenes were filmed in November, just outside Belfast in a studio in Banbridge. It was freezing and there were no flies or wasps, so that we were lucky with.
Lucky you. Bitte schön.
Hi, I'm curious on your personal opinion on how the show ended, and also on if this opinion has changed over time. So, for example, when you first heard how it was going to end, then versus when you actually saw it on screen, and now that many years have passed, if it's any different now.
Okay, well, once you leave the show, and I left at the end of season 5, you have no idea. And funny enough, the story that I was telling earlier before I rudely interrupted everybody with the phone call was that in season 3 I got in touch with the production office and I said, don't send me the scripts. And they were like, what, are you going to make it up? And I said, no, send me my scenes, but just my scenes. I'm a fan of the show. I don't want to know what happens next. I literally don't want to know the story. So once you leave the show, you have no access to what happens next. And the only funny thing that came of that, this is another good story, was that all throughout season 4, I told every actor, don't tell me, I don't want to know, don't tell me. It's the last day of filming season 4, 23rd of December. We're filming the scene in the Kingsguard room where Joffrey starts slagging off his uncle stroke dad Jamie for having nothing in the Kingsguard book, nothing in his entries. So we do that scene, we finish that scene, and I'm outside having a cigarette, and Charles Dance walks up to me and he's wearing a white dressing gown. And he said, cigarette? I said, yeah, sure, there you go, Charlie. Light? I said, yeah, I'm not a real Kingsguard, Charlie, but fuck, here you go, light. And he took a drag and he said, well, the little bastard finally killed me. So that was the spoiler to end all spoilers for me. So once you lose access to any even rumors of the story, you've no input. What did I think of the last season? I had ideas of my own. I, for example, thought that they killed the Night King too early. That's a personal opinion, based on my sense of being a huge fan of this show. I owned this show as a fan. But it was still the best thing on television, by far. I went and I looked at Series 8 for a second time. And then I went and looked at it for a third time, and it's an awful lot better than people were giving it credit for. There were, as with all Game of Thrones seasons, there were spectacular episodes. There were spectacular moments. I mean, the Battle of Winterfell was just stunning. The Battle of King's Landing was just stunning. The Hound saying goodbye to Arya. What a wonderful, wonderful thing. I did have problems. I wanted Cersei to get away. I wanted Cersei to live. And Jaime. I wanted them to get away. I really didn't like the fact that they killed Varys. That really, really, really annoyed me. It annoyed me. That is what happened with season 8. Fans had their own expectations. Viewers had their expectations about what they were going to see or what they wanted to see. And a lot of times they got what they wanted to see. The Mountain versus the Hound. Everybody was waiting for that one. But they were disappointed by maybe, no, I didn't see that coming, or no, I didn't want it to do that. No, I didn't want that to happen. So I do think there was a lot of unfair criticism of season 8. And when I went back and watched the episodes again and then a third time, I started to appreciate much, much more that it was still spectacularly good. I think we got spoiled. I think we got spoiled rotten with Game of Thrones. I really, really do. It was by far the best thing that anybody had ever seen on television. So I think people were dissatisfied when it ended and the way that it ended. But if you watch episode 1, season 1, right through to episode 6, season 8, it works. It does work. It does work. Yes, there were criticisms. Yes, some of them were justified, but it was still the best thing on television.
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
The question was how you personally liked the ending and whether that opinion has changed over the years.
Okay. So I have to come clean. I didn't watch it. But I've heard what happens.
The horror in his eyes is brilliant. Like, what?
When did you stop watching Game of Thrones?
When do you think I stopped watching Game of Thrones?
I think a lot of people, would understand why AIMEE did not watch Game of Thrones, because AIMEE's role was recast and they put an actress, this is a personal opinion, they put an actress into her role that wasn't as good as her in the role. They did. I know they did because I saw the actress and I saw her playing the role and I knew who was better. And if I had been replaced or, been removed from the show, I wouldn't have watched it again either. I wouldn't have had anything to do with it, and I wouldn't have cared how it ended. So that's why AIMEE didn't watch the end of it, just so you know. She was replaced by someone who wasn't as good as her.
Thank you. Love ya. Yeah, pretty much. But I do know what happened, and I think like you were saying, I do not think that there was going to be an ending that would satisfy everyone. And I think that so many people expected it to end in a certain way and were upset that it didn't end the way that they wanted it to, which is totally valid. But I also think that what Game of Thrones did so well throughout the entire season, throughout the entire series, and this is also like George R. R. Martin's creation did so well, was the first season ends with the main character being killed. The first book ends with the main character being killed. So from that point on, any expectations that anybody had as to where it was going to go were futile. It was like, well, what did you expect? You're watching Game of Thrones. But also, personally, Isaac, who played Bran, was a good friend of mine, and I actually just found that quite funny. I found it funny that he was king at the end, but yeah, I found that really funny just because he was a mate, and I liked the picture of him in the crown. Or does he even wear a crown? I don't know, but I haven't seen it. But I liked that image of him at the end, and I remember waking up the next morning and the news article coming up of it, and I just texted him a row of capital letters, ha 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 ha, and he didn't reply to me. So
it was really, I'll give you one something to make you smile. The person who called the ending, first person to call the ending, he called that there would be no Iron Throne at the end of it. He said there won't be an Iron Throne at the end. He called that. He also called the fact that this story started with the Starks, it will end with the Starks, was Ian McElhenney, Sir Barristan Selmy. He was certain there wasn't going to be an Iron Throne at the end of it. Anytime anybody asked him, how do you think it's going to end? He said, I don't think there's going to be an Iron Throne, and it's going to end with the Starks, because it started with the Starks. And he called that again and again. He had read all the books, which made his season 5 really disappointing. Because in the book, Book 5, Dance with Dragons, Sir Barristan has a huge part of that book. But when it came to season 5 shooting, he was gone after 4 episodes, and he was, it's not an exaggeration to say, extremely disappointed with his exit. As you would be. When you're a part of the biggest show in the world and you leave it, it's no fun.
It's not.
It's not.
We have about 2 minutes left. So if you have longer questions and you're still here tomorrow, you can also ask tomorrow. But if you want to ask now, please do.
Ask both your questions, we'll answer them quickly.
Good.
You mentioned earlier that you like Irish folklore, and I wanted to ask which is like your favorite folklore story, or like your favorite folklore stories in general?
Like so many bits of Irish folklore I absolutely love. I love the story of Tír na nÓg, which is a man falls in love with a fairy, and she takes him to the land of Tír na nÓg, which is the other place. And it's like beautiful and incredible, but he misses his family and he goes home, and then like 100 years or hundreds and hundreds of years have passed. It's a beautiful story. I've not done it justice. You go.
I love the legend of King Arthur, and I love the fact that the legend of King Arthur ended with the words, "When England faces its direst need, Arthur will return." And I thought that would make a great film. Arthur comes back into modern times.
Could do with him now.
Yeah, fuck, yeah, excuse me. So, yeah, King Arthur I love, but I love, again, Irish literature is full of myths and legends and fantasies. The Hound of Ulster was another one of my favourites. Again, would make a great film.
Yeah.
So, yeah, love folklore, love it. It's worthy, I mean, we're Irish, and we are a nation of storytellers.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And now.
Ian, just a hint. There's a Babylon 5 episode where Arthur comes back in the future. So you might want to watch that. Onto my question, Ian, you hinted or conveyed how much of a fan you were, probably others too. Were there any moments on set where people were, it's not like supposed to be like that, the book says it completely different, where people were upset?
No,
the changes.
Not ever. And I'll tell you better than that. The scripts were sacrosanct. If you got a word wrong, the script supervisor would be up to say, "You missed that word." I mean, the scripts were literally, you said what was in the script. I don't think there was a single instance of anybody saying no. No, well, actually, there may have been. I think Liam Cunningham might have objected, and what it was that he was supposed to be having either, it was suggested he was going to have an affair, or he was going to get very, very flirty with Melisandre, yeah. I think. And he said no. He said that is not what that character would do. That character is not that person. No. And they agreed with him.
I didn't know that. That's pretty cool. That's very powerful.
Yeah. I mean, it was funny. I walked on set in the first day of season 2, and David Benioff came up to me to say, "You might have heard you were dying this season." I was like, "No, I didn't hear that, no." He said, "You're not, don't worry." He said, "You are going to die," he said, "and Arya's going to kill you." And I didn't tell anybody that one for 3 years. I kept that quiet, even from my wife, for 3 years. Didn't tell anybody, because I knew that was a slip. But the writer, who was Brian Cogman, had written that I try to kill Tyrion at the Battle of Blackwater, and I get killed. And when David and Dan read that, they said, "No, not him. He has to survive. He's on Arya's list. We have other plans for him." So I got a reprieve. But no, the scripts were sacrosanct. And I have to tell you, they were pretty bloody good scripts. So no problem with them being sacrosanct. Not on my time, not once did anybody make a suggestion that changed anything. Not once.
Okay, thank you.
Me
Why would
neither.
you?
Nobody would have listened to me anyway. I was 12, you know.
Sadly, we're heading into an Oscar moment where they just turn off our microphones. Sadly, this is everything and even more than we had time for today. Ladies and gentlemen, a huge round of applause for Ian Beattie and Amy Richardson.